Hey everyone, welcome back to my kitchen. I'm Bethany, and today's recipe, I'm gonna show you how to make a roasted creamy tomato soup. It's like a classic tomato and basil soup that you can use any time of the year, but I'm using it at the end of summer when I have a lot of garden tomatoes. It is such a delicious soup, but it's so easy too, and we only need 6 ingredients. So let's get right into it. Okay, so first thing that we want to do is prep our tomatoes, and I have 3 pounds of fresh Amish paste tomatoes. They're a nice sweet plum tomato, but you can use Roma tomatoes or any plum tomato that you want. And I'm just going to slice these either in half if they're smaller or into fourths if they're a little bit bigger. And if you have a hard stem in some of them, you can just kind of remove that with a paring knife. And the tomatoes I have cut, I'm going to transfer over to this sheet pan. All right, and now we're gonna finish the rest of these tomatoes. This is the perfect soup to make if you have lots of end of summer garden tomatoes like we do, and it's kind of like, all right, we made the sauce, we've made all the other recipes, salads, and now we get to make some soup as the weather gets a little cooler. Okay, so now we're done with the tomatoes and we can chop our onion up. We have a yellow onion here and we need a small yellow onion. Mine is a little bit bigger than that, so I'll probably use 2/3 of this. Okay, and we're just slicing the onion thin, not too thin, not too thick, kind of like a 1/2 inch. And we're just gonna sprinkle this over top of the tomatoes. Kind of evenly distribute it throughout. And now 3 garlic cloves. And we're gonna leave these whole so that they roast nicely in the oven, and then we'll blend them at the end with the soup. And then we're just gonna place the garlic cloves kind of over top of everything else. Then we're gonna drizzle about 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil over top. I'm using Graza. This is a nice cooking olive oil. And the olive oil is gonna help richen the soup too. So 2 tablespoons is a nice generous amount. And then 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And we're gonna season this to taste at the end as well. So that's not the only salt we're gonna be using. And then a generous crack of black pepper over top. Now I'm just gonna use my hands to kind of toss everything together. We want to coat everything with the oil, the salt. All right, and now that everything is coated, I'm just gonna spread everything as evenly as I can over the pan. And that's why it's good to have a large roasting pan for this process so that everything can kind of spread out evenly. All right, and now I'm gonna wash my hands and then we'll pop this in the oven. And now we're gonna roast these in the oven. And the reason that we're roasting is because these tomatoes, they don't have a ton of flavor. They're sweet, but the roasting really draws out even more sweetness and more richness. So it's the perfect way to do a fresh tomato soup. You can also do it in a pot too, but I like this way better because it's also hands off. You just toss it in the oven and then we'll blend it at the end. So it's super easy. But we're gonna put this in the oven at 400 degrees for just 30 to 35 minutes, just until it has a nice roast on top. You see the onions and the tomatoes are caramelizing a little bit. All right, so we just took these out of the oven and they look great. Now, we're gonna transfer this into a blender. That's what makes this recipe so nice, is we just roast everything in the oven and transfer it to the blender and it's done. So I'm just gonna take a spoon, just kind of transfer, gonna take the blender off this, and just put these tomatoes in my container for the blender. All right, so now that we've emptied most of the pan, we're actually going to dump the liquid that's in here into the blender because we're actually not using any chicken broth or anything like that in this, so we want a little bit of that liquid. If you feel like your tomatoes have produced a lot of liquid, because every tomato is gonna be different in this recipe, then you don't have to use all of that, but we wanna use most of it just because this recipe just doesn't have any broth in it. And we're adding a little bit of garlic powder. And what I want to do is layer this soup with as much flavor as I can. So we use the fresh garlic, but a close family friend of mine taught me to layer any type of dish with both fresh and dried garlic, and it is perfect. So just 1/4 teaspoon of that. And then another pinch of salt. We will salt to taste this at the end. And then we'll blend this up. All right, so we blended it for about 30 seconds on high and it looks perfect, nice and creamy. And now we're gonna serve this with a little bit of fresh basil. Any tomato soup needs fresh basil to go with it. And we have some nice summer basil from the garden. And I'm just gonna use about 1 to 2 tablespoons, whatever amount that you would like, but there's never enough basil in anything for me. So I don't mind using a generous amount. And we're just gonna chop this really small. And before we add the basil, what I want to do is taste the soup first, because like I said, we were going to salt to taste it. Okay, so it needs definitely a generous pinch of salt. Clean spoon, not the one I just used. I'm just going to stir the salt in there. Most of the soups on my website are salt to taste, so you always just want to taste it, salt it, taste it again, see if it's right, and just keep doing that until the flavor is developed and just right. Okay, that's perfect. Oh, and also the soup is hot, by the way. Since it was roasting in the oven, we just blended it in this, so you can serve this right away, but if it cools down, you can just transfer it to another pot, heat it up a little bit, but it's ready to serve right now. As you saw, this isn't a recipe that we need chicken broth in it. The tomato juices work perfectly for the consistency, but every tomato is different, so you might have to add a splash of broth if you find it's too dense and thick. So now we're gonna transfer this to a bowl and add the basil. Okay, so we're doing taste testing, and my mom, Barbara.
Mom's here.
Mom is here. A lot of you have requested her, and she's finally here. So, welcome.
Well, thank you. So, what's exciting for me is that we grow these tomatoes together, and the summer ingredients of tomato and basil are my favorite.
Yes.
But where is the Parmesan cheese? I don't see that.
Okay, I'm gonna go get some Parmesan cheese.
Just a little bit.
Yes, always.
Okay.
She's where I get it from, so. And the basil, growing up, we would go in the garden and we would just eat leaves of basil.
Still doing that.
Yes.
All
right.
This tomato is probably one of the best heirloom ones we grow, right? The Amish paste tomato, and we pretty much try to stick with the heirlooms.
Yeah, yeah,
They reseed themselves in the garden every year. That's great.
All
Okay,
right,
here
well,
we
if you
go.
want to taste
Sure.
it, let me know what you think.
All right.
I don't know if you've actually had this soup, but.
I love the taste of basil. I love the creaminess, and I have tasted this
Oh, you have?
from your blog. Yes.
Oh, okay.
I love it. It's great with, especially in the winter, like making this even in winter. Just having something really hot and creamy and reminding us of summer.
Yeah.
And we do freeze these tomatoes after we roast them, so we make this also in the winter.
Yes. Yeah, it's a perfect winter soup too. You can still get tomatoes at the store.
Because we have so many tomatoes, I picked that basket this morning. That was beautiful.
I know the tomatoes were beautiful that we used. Mom picked those.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Mom. I'm glad you like the
My
soup.
first debut.
Yes. And that's everything for today. I hope you guys get to try this soup. It really is the best version of tomato basil that I've ever had. And it's because the ingredients are all fresh, and what could be better than that? And I love how sweet the tomatoes are in this soup. And we didn't use any sugar or carrots, because in a traditional tomato soup that would use canned tomatoes, you would use carrots to help balance the acidity. We didn't use any of that, and it's because of the sweetness from roasting them. It tastes so good and rich, and then you have that fresh basil in every bite, which is the best. So I hope you guys get to try this, and you can also serve this with tons of different things like pizza, grilled cheese, really anything that has bread. And yeah, it's not really super filling, so you'd want to pair it with something else. And as always, if you guys try this recipe, I would love to hear what you think. You can leave a review on our website or comment on this video. I love hearing from you guys, and it really means so much. It always brightens my day to see the comments that we get every day here. So as always, we'll catch you in the next recipe. I have 3 pounds of Amish, not Irish.
Martha Stewart's mother's age.
Martha Stewart's mother?
Well, how old was she when she died? 90?
I don't know.
Yeah, she was a guest on Martha's TV show all the time.
Oh.
And here's my mom. You're not putting that on, right?
Do you want it?
No, I don't want all that video on that.
What?
No, that he's just letting run.
Oh, no, not right now.
We cut it up.
Oh, okay.
We'll cut, yeah, everything's
We'll
cut.
go from harm to it'll be back.
Okay.